So last week I talked about that the Minnesota Vikings were waiting to interview, at the time, Philadelphia Eagles quarterback coach John Defilippo for the offensive coordinator position of the Minnesota Vikings going into 2018. Well, the wait is over. He is now officially the offensive coordinator for the Vikings next season. There's also speculation that he's going to be one of the top head coaching candidates going into 2019. And you know what? Unless you're on the New England Patriots coaching staff, this is pretty much par for the course. If you're a hot commodity as any type of coordinator, more likely you're going to be a one-and-done coordinator anyway. But you know what? I'm very excited. We saw what they did with that coaching staff headed by Doug Peterson did with Nick Foles starting in that NFC Championship game. Because you remember in the divisional round against the Atlanta Falcons, they were a Julio Jones catch away from being eliminated. The Eagles were. So it pretty much started that NFC Championship game through the Super Bowl, starting with the Vikings and then the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, where Nick Foles just looked like Johnny Unitas out there. I don't know what the hell happened. But you know what? If this is any type of new, innovative stepping stone for the next type of coaching, the next innovative type of coaching that's going to go forward with the NFL, I want a piece of that. And so whoever was under the stewardship of Doug Peterson, hell, I'm all for it. Rick Spielman, he knows what he's doing. Mike Zimmer, he's a very selfless head coach. He doesn't care. He just wants somebody that knows what he's doing on offense, knows how to call plays despite whatever quarterback that they're going to have. And I mentioned that identifying the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings was my #1 priority for them. Now, moving forward, who's going to be the quarterback, we'll just have to see. And you know what? As far as the way it's looking right now, I wouldn't be surprised. My whole thing is, for me, it's either Kirk Cousins or Teddy Bridgewater. That's it. The only way Case Keenum is on this roster is if he's competing with Teddy Bridgewater for the starting spot. And then I thought about it a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Teddy Bridgewater, just for the simple fact that Mike Zimmer loves him. Rick Spielman drafted him, and we know how Rick Spielman is when it comes to his draft picks. He wants to be absolutely right every single time. And I've been an avid supporter of Teddy Bridgewater. I've been saying all throughout the season, not really all throughout the season, but through the first half of the season of 2017, I was like, look, Case Keenum, he's doing a great job coming in as a backup. He's filling in very nicely for Sam Bradford, but Teddy Bridgewater, he's healthy now. We got to see what he's all about, especially we're so early in the season. And then, you know, worst case scenario is if he stinks, bring back Case Keenum. He's been a backup his whole life. It's not that big of a deal. And then I want to say it was, week 7 or 8 or 9 after that. I was like, you know what, Case Keenum is doing a pretty good job. And you're so far into the season that you can't afford that learning curve of Teddy Bridgewater coming in the second half of the season and then trying to wait for him to get up to speed against NFL defenders coming at him beyond just OTAs or practice and everything like that. So anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Teddy Bridgewater being the starting quarterback. Like I said, Mike Zimmer loves him. Rick Spielman wants to be right every single time. But the thing is, if you're going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater, if you're not going to go after Kirk Cousins, right? So let's just say we love Teddy so much, we want to give him one final chance, but you're going to compete against somebody. You shouldn't bring Case Keenum, because I thought about this a little more. Even though Case Keenum, worst case, if he does come back with the Vikings, he'll get franchise tag. He'll make over $20 million. It will be great. And I know that I've been saying, look, Case Keenum, he's not the answer for the Vikings, because he's not. He just simply is not, in my opinion. He needs everything around him to be perfect. He's throwing balls up for grabs, and luckily Thielen and Diggs were able to come down with it. He's a very good quarterback. He's much better than what I anticipated he would be this season. I'll give him that. But as far as if you think that you have a window to win a championship, Case Keenum is not going to be that guy. I really do firmly believe that. However, market-wise, this is the highest value that Case Keenum is probably ever going to see for himself in free agency. If you're talking about bringing it, if you're thinking about not going after Kirk Cousins, and you're like, you know what, we want Teddy to be the guy so bad, then if you're going to do that, because I know I've been listening to 1500 ESPN, and I've also been listening to other media outlets as well, I like the idea of Teddy Bridgewater and Josh McCown battling it out in training camp for the starting position, because if Teddy Bridgewater, like I said, he has a lot of upside from what we saw when the circumstances around him wasn't so great, with Norv Turner calling plays and one of the worst offensive lines in football at the time. But my thing is, if you're going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater to give him a chance to be the starting quarterback, why not be a Josh McCown who's going to be relatively cheaper than that cap hit that Case Keenum is going to get? And then not only that, don't screw this dude Case Keenum over, all right? Like I said, I don't believe he's the quarterback that's going to get the Vikings over the hump to challenge to be a legit Super Bowl contender, but this is the highest value he's going to see for himself in the free agency marketplace. So once Kirk Cousins signs somewhere else, Case Keenum is obviously the next man up that will get a nice big contract for himself. So give this dude a chance because, look, he battles it out with Teddy Bridgewater next year, and Teddy Bridgewater ultimately becomes the starting quarterback, which I do believe would happen. But you know what? You can't just give it to Teddy Bridgewater. He has to prove himself. But assuming that Teddy Bridgewater is the starting quarterback going into next season, then what happens to Case Keenum after that? His value goes straight to hell after that. And then after next season, he'll be a free agent again. And then he won't get any type of hits like he would be if you would just let him go into the free agency market. So I think if you're going to bring back Teddy Bridgewater to compete for the starting quarterback job again, bring in a Josh McCown. I like the idea of a Josh McCown now that I think about it more. And you need a backup no matter what happens. But he will be relatively cheaper, much cheaper than what Case Keenum would be this year as a franchise tag option. And then not only that, let the dude go out and get himself a 3-year guaranteed deal and make whatever money he can, because this is the highest he's going to see in value for himself. Then not only that, the last thing on the Vikings front, the Minnesota Vikings, they blocked quarterback coach Kevin Stefanski from interviewing with the New York Giants. Pat Shurmur, the new head coach of the New York Giants, they blocked the hell out of Kevin Stefanski interviewing for the offensive coordinator job for the New York Giants. Is it unfair? Yes, it is. I think that any chance you can get any sort of promotion, anytime you can move up in your professional career, I think you should allow that person to go do it. But, hey, the rules are in place. The rules are in place. What is it, position coaches or assistant coaches, where they say unless you're going for a promotion and hire. So, basically, they lump the coordinators and a wide receiver or a tight ends coach in the same position, which obviously a coordinator is an upgrade from a position coach. So they obviously have those rules set in place. So, hey, the rules are the rules. So is it screwed up? Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I still haven't gotten over Pat Shurmur falling asleep in the and calling plays in that NFC Championship game. So it is what it is. We'll just have to see what happens. I do like this John Defilippo hire. Now the next thing that we need to address is the quarterback situation. We'll have to see. There's a long offseason of football to go, so we'll see what happens moving forward. But real quick, we're going to talk about the moving forward to the NBA and staying in Minnesota. Going to talk about the Timberwolves. I like to follow them a lot. Going to talk about how they've progressed from last year, really the last 13, 14 years. They're going to go to the playoffs. They're looking really good. Going to talk about them, but real quick.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Matt of the hashtag NFZ, a.k.a. No Fly Zone, now officially part of the BGC Sports Network.
You can also find the show on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/ spell it out, hashtag NFZ and the Apple Podcast app.
Now, let's kick it back over to Realistic Randy and the Mediokr at Best Sports Podcast.
So I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. I'm not a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. I watch other teams more than the Dallas Mavericks, and that includes the Minnesota Timberwolves. The reason why I don't really watch that many Dallas Mavericks games. I even tried to watch a Dallas Mavericks game last night, and I talked about this last week. When Dennis Smith Jr. isn't on the floor, the Dallas Mavericks are an unwatchable product, okay? But anyway, I watch a lot of other teams just simply for the fact of the players that they have that I like to follow, such as I love to watch Boogie Cousins play, but obviously he's out for the year. So the Pelicans aren't as a sexy team to watch, even though they still have Anthony Davis. They're not a team. They're not as good to watch without DeMarcus Cousins there. But I do like to watch the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. I love Jimmy Butler. Karl Anthony Towns has been one of my favorite players since he got drafted. He did win Rookie of the Year. I thought he should have been an All-Star every single year. He's finally going to make it to the All-Star this weekend. Breaking news, I will be at Staples for the All-Star weekend this week, so it's going to be really fun. But anyway, the Timberwolves, they've missed the playoffs for the last, 13 or 14 seasons, and they're going to make the playoffs this year. So they're fourth in the Western Conference. They're absolutely doing very, very well. The acquisition of Jimmy Butler has been it's just been completely just irreplaceable, just priceless, just invaluable for this team because he brings that leadership quality on top of being a top 15, maybe 12 to 15 player in the NBA. He plays on both ends of the floor. He's an all-around basketball player, and that's exactly what you need. And I was saying this about the Minnesota Timberwolves, man, Karl-Anthony Towns, he's great. And at the time, before they got Jimmy Butler, I was like, man, Zach LaVine is great. But the one common denominator that I've seen or that I've been saying for the last couple of years is Andrew Wiggins. So I'm not going to bash Andrew Wiggins as much as the media already does on a daily basis. I'm not just going to just pile on to him. We know who he is at this point. Andrew Wiggins he's a guy that's not going to do much outside of scoring, and he needs a lot of shots in order to be able to do just that. Other than that, he's not going to dish out the ball. He's not going to create plays for anybody else. He may get a rebound or two. I don't know. But it seems like I'm on record for saying this when it comes to Andrew Wiggins. When they made the trade for Jimmy Butler, when they gave away Zach LaVine for Jimmy Butler, and I believe they gave away their first-round draft pick as well, and in addition to Chris Dunn as well, I was saying, you know what, and I didn't say this on a podcast. I don't remember if I said this on a podcast earlier in the year, but I did say it on Facebook. I am on record talking about this with Andrew Wiggins, facebook.com/realisticrandy. But when they made the trade for Jimmy Butler, I was like, man, you know what? I probably would have traded Andrew Wiggins and tried to have kept Zach LaVine, because I think Zach LaVine is better than Andrew Wiggins. And then not only that, he just offers much more than Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins, when you think of the name and he was the #1 draft pick, you think, okay, he's going to be great. We'll get him to some other coaching staff. Some other coaching staff is going to be like, we can fix him. We can prop him up. He's a #1 draft pick. Let's go. But in a sense of just pure basketball, Zach LaVine is a better player. He's much more smoother. He does a lot to create plays for other players. He's a great shooter. He's a much better shooter than Andrew Wiggins. And he's a driving force in the paint. He's an all-around basketball player. Defense is but you know what? Andrew Wiggins, his defense is okay. It's not necessarily okay, but he's overall, and Zach LaVine is a better player than Andrew Wiggins. But my thing is, I would have traded Andrew Wiggins if it would have been possible instead of Zach LaVine, unless the Chicago Bulls already did their homework on Andrew Wiggins. They say, you know what, Zach LaVine is clearly the better player. And then not only that, but later on in the offseason, when when Kyrie Irving he didn't necessarily make the announcement, but the reports got leaked out that Kyrie Irving, one of the places that he wanted to get traded, he didn't want to play with LeBron James anymore. He wanted to go into a different system with a different style of basketball play. And one of the teams that he mentioned that he wanted to play for was the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I said, oh, what are we talking about here? And I'm like, you know what? Since that's one of his preferred destinations, hey, if the Cavs want Andrew Wiggins, if all it takes is Andrew Wiggins and, I don't know, not necessarily 3 future, but I don't know, 2 future first-round draft picks, or want 2 future first-round draft picks, whatever the case may be, outside of Karl-Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler, hey, have whatever it is you want. So who knows if the Cavaliers would have accepted that? Who knows if they were even looking at Andrew Wiggins? After all, they did draft him, so who knows if they even wanted to bring him back. But I would have done everything I could have to bring Kyrie Irving to the Minnesota Timberwolves. If Andrew Wiggins was an option, I would have sent his ass over to Cleveland and took Kyrie Irving from there. Because the idea of Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, and Karl-Anthony Towns sounds really good right about now. So who knows if the Cleveland Cavaliers would have even accepted that. But the point I'm getting at is that the writing is on the wall with Andrew Wiggins, okay? I compare him to Harrison Barnes all the time. To me, they're the exact same player. Once in a while, they make an explosive play out of nowhere, and you're like, wow, that was crazy. But for the most part, they disappear in games. I can't tell you how many times where I've watched Timberwolves game. I watched the game against the Houston Rockets the other night, right? The game against the Rockets the other night, and it's the same song and dance with Andrew Wiggins, where I legitimately forget that he's on the floor. I talk about Anthony Barr and how he's Jason Taylor one week, and then the next week you forget he's on the field. Well, I feel like that all the time, as far as feeling like you forget that he's on the field, or in this case, on the court with Andrew Wiggins. I feel that way all the time. I remember there was a game last year. I couldn't remember. Andrew Wiggins scored 30 points, and I said to myself, that is one of the most quietest 30-point performances that I have ever seen in my life. You offered this dude, not even offered, you signed him to a 5-year extension worth close to $150 million. So not this year, but starting next year, he's going to be making close to $30 million annually per year. So look, it seems like outside of the Celtics, the Warriors, and probably I would say the Rockets as well, it seems like every other team in the league has some sort of cap situation or some contract situation where it's like, oh, how can we get out of this? But the writing has been on the wall with Andrew Wiggins. What I'm getting at is, yes, you're going to make the playoffs. You're going to beat whoever in the first round probably. But if you're trying to, and you know what? For the sake of just being able to make the playoffs, maybe that's going to be enough for Timberwolves fans. I wouldn't blame you. But moving forward, because Jimmy Butler, he's going to have, what, 2, maybe 3 or 4, not 3, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, maybe somewhere in that range as far as being a productive player, maybe 2, 3 years as far as being in his prime. So what I'm getting at is that you're going to have Andrew Wiggins throughout this entire time unless you can trade for him. But if every other team is already hip on this dude as far as like, nah, we don't want him, then you're stuck with Andrew Wiggins. I don't know what else you can do at this point. My thing was last year, you brought in Tom Thibodeau. I was like, okay, Tom Thibodeau, he's a hard-ass coach. He's going to get through to Andrew Wiggins, and he's going to, bring a fire out of him to be like, you know what, I'll give it on both ends of the floor. I'll just be right there. I'm going to give it a little bit more effort, and I'm just going to get better and better as a player. That didn't work out. Now I'm saying, you know what, you brought in Jimmy Butler. All right, this will be the stepping stone because he's an extension of Tom Thibodeau on the court as far as being a player, and that hasn't worked out. Andrew Wiggins is still the same player. You would think he's trying to sign a contract, even though he signed a 5-year deal worth close to $150 million. So I like the Timberwolves. I like what they've done so far, being able to bring in Jeff Teague. I was never really a fan of Ricky Rubio. I know there's a lot of Ricky Rubio apologists out there. Well, he never really had the right system or team, or if, he have stretches here, but look, he's a traditional point guard. I will give Ricky Rubio this. He's one of the best playmakers in the NBA. Him with Chris Paul, LeBron James, Ben Simmons is rising up the ranks in that as well. I believe he's 5th in assists, Ben Simmons is. But Ricky Rubio is a damn good playmaker. I'll give him that. But he's in the wrong era of basketball. If you're a perimeter player, you need to be at least somewhat decent at shooting the basketball, and Ricky Rubio just hasn't been consistent at doing that. Jeff Teague is obviously a better shooter. He's not the better playmaker. He's nowhere near the playmaker that Ricky Rubio is, but you know what? He's a better shooter, spreads the floor out a little bit more, and obviously Tyus Jones has done a pretty good job as well. So anyway, that's my little spiel on the Minnesota Timberwolves. They'll do a good job for the rest of this year in spite of Andrew Wiggins. Like I said, they'll probably win in the first round, and then after that, moving forward, starting next year, because you're going to get this whole, yes, we made the playoffs, let's celebrate. You'll probably get this year to just do that, but moving forward next year, then the expectations are going to go up a little bit higher. So are you going to be able to compete with those San Antonio Spurs or the OKC Thunder or the Houston Rockets or the Golden State Warriors? As of right now, absolutely not. The only dude that can control as far as giving any type of effort, just like defense. I don't understand how dudes just don't play defense. It's all about effort. The only dude that can do that to maybe take his game to another level is Andrew Wiggins. No one else can do that for him. So anyway, that's my spiel on the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going to get into more NBA news. Lonzo Ball charging $200 for autographs during All-Star Weekend. LeVar Ball talking about he's not going back to the Lakers if they don't bring on LiAngelo and LaMelo. The new-look Cavs, they look great as well. And Ben Simmons got snubbed for the All-Star game 4 times. We'll talk about that next. Mediokr at Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Rain.
In the world you cannot run from. Yeah, 'cause hurt people, not hard to love people. So